Well, hello again, my beloved AP Econ students. We're here to do some micro review. So we're switching gears from macro, putting on our micro hats here. I am starting with Unit 2. Unit 1, pretty foundational stuff, scarcity, opportunity cost. Probably the more complex, if you want to call them that, things would be production possibilities curves and comparative and absolute advantage. I did post a video before spring break where I kind of gave a quick overview of that. So if you want to refresh yourselves of that, you can. Most of it, though, I think you're pretty good on. So this is Unit 2 stuff. Again, this is pretty important stuff, though. So what you're going to see on here, and again, like we've done before, when you see this in YouTube, I'm going to have times for each of these showing when you can go to the video and hit that particular concept. It'll also be in this document that I will email to you, or not email, I'll post on Canvas for you. And so if you want to go to one specific spot, you can, but this is going to be kind of the overview. Demand and demand shifters, again, most of this stuff is going to be pretty foundational. I can probably whip through it pretty quick, but I just want to give you the overview. Supply and supply shifters, of course, equilibrium, price and quantity, how changes in supply and demand affect price and quantity. Price floors and ceilings and kind of the nuances there, consumer and producer surplus, everyone's favorite elasticity. I know you love that math that's involved with that. And then lastly, marginal utility. So that's kind of what I'm going to run through with this set of concepts. So first of all, law of demand and demand shifters. The law of demand says, pretty simple, we all know this, as the price increases, there will be a lesser quantity demanded. Remember, that means that you are going to purchase less. It does not mean that your entire demand shifts, okay? That means the curve moves. We're not moving the curve, we are moving along a curve with these price changes. And of course, as the price decreases, there will be a greater quantity demanded, okay? So pretty simple. Things get expensive, you're like, I'm gonna wait. When things go on sale, that's when you say, yeah, I'm gonna buy, okay? So you buy more at a lower price and less at a higher price. Pretty simple. That's pretty much how we work. Nobody ever goes to the store and says, ooh, that's on sale. I'm gonna wait until it goes off sale and pay full price for it. Of course not, that'd be silly. All right, and just as a reminder, changing price does not shift demand, it just changes quantity demanded. So of course we have our downward sloping curve. As you change the price from PA to PB, your quantity demanded goes from QA to QB. Again, that's not a change in demand. Nothing has made you like this product more or less. It's just simply that at a lower price, you can buy more. Why is that? Why is demand downward sloping? Well, two reasons important. Number one is the income effect. We only have so much money. So if I have $100 that I take to the grocery store with me, if groceries are cheaper, if food is cheaper, I can buy more food with my $100. If food is more expensive, I can't buy as much food with my $100. It's not that I don't want to buy food, it's just that I only have so much money to go around, because my money is limited. If yours is not limited, let me know, I'd like to be your friend. For most of us, we have a certain amount of money and we have to make decisions, we have to budget how we're going to use that money. The other reality is, of course, what's called the substitution effect, and that is that when a particular product's price is lower, it becomes a more attractive alternative to something else, right? So again, if I'm going to grab a bite to eat on the way home, there are a number of fast food places as well as sit-down places that I can order takeout from on my way home. So if one is more expensive, I might not hit that, but if one has a nice sale going on, I might be more inclined to hit that one, right? So, and vice versa. If things are more expensive, then it's a less attractive substitute, right? So two reasons why demand is downward sloping: the income reality, or the income effect, and the substitution effect, okay? The fact that there are often, with very few products, there are no alternatives. Almost everything, there is some kind of an alternative that you can use, and so you weigh those options, okay? You can go here, this has got a great deal, or this doesn't, or whatever. And then, of course, the things that shift demand, income, and of course we differentiate here between normal goods and inferior goods. Normally, I always use the example, it's pretty simple. If you won the lottery, do you think you would buy more or fewer things? For the most part, you would buy more things. You'd buy more cars, you'd buy more computers, you'd buy more vacations, you'd buy more food, you'd buy more house, you'd buy more whatever, right? If your income decreases, if you get laid off from your job, you buy less of those things. I say that's how you normally act. That's why those things are normal goods. Your demand increases, you buy more of them. Demand decreases, you buy less of them. Some things, on the other hand, are considered inferior to the extent to where if your demand decreases if your income increases. In other words, now that you're a millionaire, you're not buying secondhand clothing anymore. You're not buying ramen noodles. You're not buying long-range bus tickets, right? Those are kind of for, that's, when I was poor and now I got all this money. I'm not doing that stuff. If your income decreases, now you find yourself going to secondhand clothing stores more often because I can't afford brand new clothes or whatever else, right? So that would be considered an inferior good. So it kind of depends on the type of good you're talking about and how income affects that. So you have to pay attention to that. Substitutes and complements I'm going to talk more about when we talk about elasticity, but just in a nutshell, substitutes are any items that can be used in place of each other. So Sara Lee bread or butternut bread. The brand name Doritos or the Kroger brand Doritos, right? So those are two things that are pretty much kind of the same. And so the price of one can affect your demand for the other, right? You go to the store and the Kroger brand Doritos are 1/3 the price of the brand name Doritos. You might be like, I'm not buying brand name Doritos, I'm gonna go Kroger brand. They're pretty good, they're pretty close, right? If they were the same price, if Kroger raises the price, well, you might be more inclined to buy the Dorito brand and whatnot. So price of substitutes can affect each other. Complements, those are two things that go together. If you buy one, you buy the other. So for example, if you buy a car, you're going to buy gas to go in it. If you buy peanut butter, you often buy jelly, things like that, things that go together. Maybe there's a particular marinade that you like that goes with the roast, right? So you go to the store, huge sale on roasts. And you're like, I'm going to do a roast for dinner tomorrow. So I'm going to get the roast. Guess what you're also going to buy? This marinade that you love to put with the roast. And you put it in the crock pot. It's all ready for your dinner time. It's lovely, right? So those are complements, things that go together. So the price of the roast got cheaper. That increased my demand for the marinade. I wasn't going to buy the marinade just to buy it, but now that I'm buying the roast, I'm buying the thing that goes with it. Okay, and vice versa. If roast is expensive, not buying it, not buying the marinade. So those are complements, two things that go together. Of course, tastes and preferences and future expectations. There's no hard and fast rule here. It's just kind of whatever the situation dictates, right? So taste, and if something becomes more popular or less popular, obviously it affects demand. And if people think something's going to happen in the future, think about toilet paper, right? All of a sudden there's this huge increase in the demand for toilet paper because why? People just think they're not going to be able to get toilet paper for some reason. Coronavirus kills toilet paper. So everyone goes out and gets toilet paper because of future expectations, right? These things happen. All right, law of supply and supply shifters goes the opposite as demand. Of course, as the price increases, there will be a greater quantity supplied. Again, quantity supplied, not a shift in supply, but moving along a supply curve. And of course, as price decreases, there will be a lesser quantity supplied. And just a reminder, changing price does not shift the supply, it just moves along the curve. Now, why is supply upward sloping? So again, as you can see, if the price based on this graph is $2, 4 units are supplied. If the price goes up to $6, then 12 units are supplied. Well, why is that the case? Most of it has to do with marginal costs. If you remember, and we're going to review this next time, we talk about cost curves. As you make more of something, your marginal costs tend to go up, right? So if you're going to make more products, your marginal costs go up. Only if the price is covering those marginal costs are you going to produce more. At a low price, it's not enough to cover your costs. You're not going to make as much. If you want me to make more, if you want me to sacrifice more things via opportunity cost and whatnot, you got to pay the price. Or another way of thinking about it is this: at a low price, nobody wants to make that product because there's not much money to be made. As the price goes up, everybody wants to make it because there's money to be made, right? So you can think of it that way as well. All right, so what causes a change in supply? The biggest thing, of course, is a change in marginal cost. Anytime your marginal costs change, it changes your supply, right? So if marginal costs decrease, if it becomes cheaper to make, I can make more of these things. If my marginal costs increase, if it becomes more expensive to make, I can't make as much and my supply decreases. Examples of things that change marginal cost and wages, that's a big cost for most businesses. So if wages go up or down, that affects how much they can make. Input prices, which are the inputs, the materials you're using to make the product. Per unit, remember between that and lump sum, per units change behavior, lump sum does not. But per unit taxes or subsidies, and then changes in technology typically go in a positive direction. It usually gets better, right? So technology gets better, you make more things. So any change in marginal cost, those are examples of those, are going to cause supply to change. And then, of course, a change in the number of suppliers, and that's often due to regulations, licensing, things like that. Again, think about all the businesses that have been forced to shut down. That's an example. There's a lot less supply for certain things now, right? So supply of certain things that you used to be able to get before, now you can't get because they're not necessary goods. They're considered luxuries or whatever. So that can change supply as well. And again, when you say change, you're talking about the entire curve shifting. Okay, and of course, our rule, I didn't write it up here. If you forget ERL, you're in big, big trouble, right? Increase right, decrease left. You guys know that. All right, now, how do changes in supply and demand have effect on price and quantity? So this is just a quick summary. I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs. We spent several days on this back in the fall. I think you guys get it now. We've done this so much over the past few months, over the course of the year. Bottom line is the intersection of supply and demand creates our equilibrium price and quantity. At this point, there is no shortage or surplus. The amount supplied equals the amount demanded, and life is good. Okay, now, when you change or shift supply and demand, I'll just do one of these for you, it will change the price and quantity. So, for example, if supply increases, I'll just use my graph right here. Okay, remember ERL, increase right. So my supply increases. Okay, now compared to my original price here, P1, now I'm at P2. So my price decreased. And compared to my original quantity Q1, I'm at Q2. And so my quantity increased. So when supply increases, what do we find happens? Price decreases and quantity increases. If I were to decrease supply, it would be the opposite. Makes price go up, quantity go down. I'll give you the real quick one with one of the demands. If demand were to increase, okay, so I'm going to shift my demand curve to the right. Again, compared to P1, P2 is higher, so price goes up. And compared to Q1, Q2 is higher, so quantity goes up. So price goes up and quantity goes up. When demand increases and when demand decreases, it's the opposite. Okay, when one thing shifts, it's pretty certain what's going to happen. All right, now, when both things shift, that's when it gets a little bit tricky. And if you remember back in September, I think it was, maybe even August, when I showed you this trick where you can kind of figure out this bottom half by using the top half. So, again, I'm going to walk you through one of these, and you can just look at the rest of the examples here. But what happens when supply increases and demand increases? So, we are looking at this right here and comparing it with this right here, okay? So these are the two we're looking at, supply increases and demand increases. Well, why is price uncertain? Okay, well notice when supply increases, that makes price go down. When demand increases, it makes price go up. Well, if you don't know how much supply and demand shift, maybe supply shifted more than demand, maybe demand shifted more than supply, maybe they were equal. You don't know what's going to happen to price. It could go up, it could go down, it could stay the same. On the other hand, if you notice, when you compare the quantities, both times, when supply increases and when demand increases, both times quantity increases. So that means no matter what you do, you can graph that a million different ways, quantity is always going to increase. Okay, so price is uncertain, quantity increases. And you can kind of use that trick to think about the rest of them, but you got the chart there, it should make sense on how that phases. So bottom line is when both shift, one of the variables, either the price or the quantity, is going to be uncertain. Depends on the extent of the shift and this and that. Okay, so that's our equilibrium. All right, let's look at price floors and ceilings. So what is the definition of a price floor? It is a minimum, just like it sounds, a floor. Okay, the least you can charge, the minimum that you can go. All right, now, to be binding, or sometimes they call it effective. In other words, to make a difference in the market, the price floor has to be above the equilibrium price, like we see in this example graph right here, which prevents the price from getting to where it wants to get. Remember, it always wants to get here to equilibrium. If I say I can't go below this dotted red line, this price floor, then I can't get there, and we have a problem. What kind of a problem do we have? Well, we tend to have a surplus. How do we know it's a surplus? Because at the inflated price of $4, based on this graph, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. At that price, 40 are supplied, only 20 are bought, so you have 20 left over, 20 units that were made that were not bought, okay? Now remember, if you happen to put the price floor below equilibrium, it's not going to be an issue, because if the price can get there, it is going to get there, and then we don't have a problem, okay? So to be binding or effective, it has to be above the price, the equilibrium price. And then, of course, price ceilings are pretty much the exact opposite of everything we just said. That's a maximum. Okay, think of a ceiling. It's the most you can charge for something, so it's a maximum. To be effective, it has to be below equilibrium price, preventing the price from getting where it wants to get. Again, if I put my price ceiling up here, no problem, right? Because the price is going to get there where it should be. Supply equals demand, no shortage, surplus. But if I can't get there, then we have a real problem. What kind of a problem? A shortage, because at the low price, the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. More people want it than units were made. I was thinking like on Black Friday, that's a good example, right? Prices are super low, probably below equilibrium, and not everyone who goes to Best Buy gets a TV on Black Friday, right? So there's a shortage, there's not enough to go around, and that's what price ceilings tend to cause, okay? Again, so just remember the binding things, remember the definition, but I think you guys get that pretty good. Let's look at producer and consumer surplus. Let's start with consumer surplus. It's the additional benefit a consumer receives from a purchase. So I always think about it this way, or the way it says it's essentially the difference between what someone is willing to pay, what it's worth to them, and what they actually pay. So there's a pair of shoes that you would gladly pay $100 for. That's how much they're worth to you, $100. If you get those shoes for $75, guess what? You got, in a sense, a $25 bonus. You got an item worth $100 to you for only $75. So you gained, your surplus is $25. That's what consumer surplus is. The most important thing, though, and remember these rules, and it'll always set you straight when you're looking at a graph. You gotta find the area. It's always the area above the price. We're gonna show this in a second with the graph. Above price, below demand, and to the left of quantity purchased. You don't get a surplus from something you don't purchase, so it has to be something that was purchased. Producer surplus is the additional benefit a producer gets from a sale. Basically, it's the difference in what it costs to produce and the price they sold it for, essentially their profit. So I always think about it this way. Think of the supply curve as kind of their cost curve, right? We've talked about that before. Supply is basically the same as saying your marginal cost. So any price greater than your marginal cost is your profit. If it costs you $50 to make the pair of shoes and you sell them for $75, you make a profit of $25, right? That's your surplus, your producer surplus. So it is below price, above supply, to the left of quantity purchase. So let's apply those. What was our rule for consumer surplus? Here's my price P1. So it's the area above price, below demand, and to the left of quantity purchase, which is here at Q1. So of course, as you can see, this reddish, whatever you call that, shaded in area is our consumer surplus. What did we say about producer surplus? Producer surplus is the area below price, which is P1, above supply, which is right here, and to the left of quantity sold, which is Q1, and so the blue area is our producer surplus. Now remember, there might be circumstances like we talked about a moment ago with price floors and ceilings or other things that prevents price from getting to market clearing price, and that's going to create what we call deadweight loss. So again, this is a good example though, because we get to apply our rules. What is our rule for consumer surplus? The area above price. Now remember, PF is our new price because of the price floor. So it's the area above price, below demand, and to the left of quantity purchased, which is QD. That's all that was purchased, was QD. Okay, so that's why we stop right there. And of course, this purple area becomes your consumer surplus. Producer surplus is the area below price, which is PF because of the price floor, above supply, which is right here, and to the left of quantity purchased, right? Why? Because you don't get a benefit from something that wasn't purchased, right? So if consumers only buy QD, that's all you get to sell, and so producers get this orange area all in here, this little trapezoid, and then compared to like our original graph like this, you have this area here that represents deadweight loss. That is benefit that should have been received, okay? Like we're saying here, benefit that should have been received, that is not there, okay, or not achieved. And so on that black area is deadweight loss. You kind of see from this who likes price floors and who doesn't. Producers, they like price floors, okay? They like when the price is raised artificially. Consumers, not so much. It would be the reverse if it was a price ceiling. Consumers love when prices are set really low, those that get it anyway, and producers don't like it so much. So you would see their surplus grow, consumer surplus grow, producer surplus shrink. That's kind of what happens there. All right, but that's that. All right, elasticity, the good stuff here, all the little math. So, elasticity in a nutshell. What are we talking about? We know that price affects quantity supplied and quantity demanded. The question is, how much does a change in price affect quantity supplied and demanded? Now, if you change your price a little bit and your quantity supplied or demanded changes a lot, you would say that's elastic. And it's very descriptive, right? Think elastic, it stretches, okay? It's gonna have a big impact. If you say something is inelastic, you change the price, but it does not have a big impact on the quantity supplied or demanded, and so we say it's rigid, it's more inelastic. In a nutshell, that's what we're seeking to measure here, okay, and that's what I go through with all of this. Perfectly inelastic means that you change the price, people buy the exact same amount, or people supply the exact same amount, okay, it doesn't really matter based on that, okay? So our formula, okay, is right here, percent change, and it's not change in quantity, it's percent change in quantity, divided by percent change in price. You do that and it's going to spit out a number anywhere between 0 and potentially infinity, which is kind of weird. It's not going to make sense completely until we talk about perfect competition next time. But basically you're going to get a number between 0 and infinity. So a number of 0, this would be an example where you change the price, say 20%. And what do we say? People buy the exact same amount. What was the percent change if people buy the exact same amount? That's right, 0%. So 0 divided by anything is 0, and that is what we call perfectly inelastic. If the number is between 0 and 1, let's say that you change the price 20% and it has a 10% change in quantity demanded, that would be, say, 0.5. Okay, and so that's relatively inelastic, we call that. Sometimes it's uninelastic, which means the percents are essentially the same. So a 20% change in price begets a 20% change in demand. Exact 1 is uninelastic. Anything greater than 1, okay, I get a 20% change in price and 30% fewer people buy it, or more people. That's a 1.5. Coefficient of demand elasticity greater than 1, relatively elastic. And if you get an infinity, which is a horizontal line, that's perfectly elastic. Again, that's kind of a weird one until you get to perfect competition. But that's how you do the math on that. Now, if they give you the numbers, the percents, that's nice and neat. Sometimes, though, you're going to find that your total revenue test is a simpler way of doing it, or even a shortcut. So, this is another way of finding out elasticities using the total revenue test. Pretty simple. You take the price and multiply it by the quantity demanded. So I'm going to give you a simple example here. Let's say that the price of something is $1. And the quantity demanded is, let's just say 100. And then you raise the price to $2. As you raise the price, some people are not going to buy it, right? That's the law of demand. The price goes up, demand goes down. So let's say that, so I don't know why I put dollar signs over here, because I have issues maybe. But quantity demand is 100, and if you raise the price $2, quantity goes down to 75. Well, one of the things you can do is figure out the total revenue. Total revenue is simply price times the quantity at that price. So at $1, you're going to make $100. At $2, you're going to make $150. Okay, now, here's our rule. If the higher price, like this did, if the higher price leads to a greater total revenue, demand is inelastic. Okay, so here I go from $1 to $2, $1, $2, and my total revenue goes from $100 to $150. Well, that's inelastic because my revenue goes up as I raise my price. Okay, on the other hand, let me extend this so I can show you this. Let's say you raise the price again to $3, and now only, let's say 40 people buy it. Okay, now my total revenue is 120. Okay, so like this one, I went to the higher price and my revenue went down. So in this case, I want the lower price. Okay, between $2 and $3, $2 makes me more total revenue. So between here and here, demand is inelastic. And between these two prices, demand is elastic. And again, I've said it before, your total revenue test is probably going to be your best friend, because it'll come up at some point where they give you numbers that it's either an easier way of doing it or the only way of doing it, depending on what information they give you. Okay, so make sure you know the total revenue test. When you like the higher price, it's inelastic. Again, between these two, $2 gets you greater revenue, higher price inelastic. When the lower price gets you greater revenue, it's elastic, like it is here. Okay, so total revenue test can help you out. Now, real quick, this is pretty simple, what elasticity looks like on a graph. The more vertical the line, the more inelastic it is, showing that there is changing prices not having a big influence on demand or supply. It could be supply as well. And the more horizontal, the more elastic. Okay, of course, then the perfectly elastic demand is or supply is horizontal. Perfectly inelastic is vertical. So just a refresher on what the curves look like. All right, and then of course we have two other types of elasticity. We look at cross-price elasticity. This goes back to we talked about substitutes and complements, okay, and how they affect each other. So remember, cross-price elasticity is how the change in the price of one item affects the demand for another item. And so our formula, kind of the same as what we did a moment ago, percent change in price, in this case price of good A, which is underneath, the percent change in the quantity of good B. Okay, so how this would work, for substitutes, you raise the price of good A, so I'm going to put a plus there. If you raise the price of good A, and there's an increase in the demand for good B, okay, whatever the numbers are don't matter so much. The most important thing is if you divide a positive by a positive, you come out with a positive number. The same is true, by the way, it goes the same in reverse. If you lower the price of good A, okay, which would be a negative, and the demand for the other product goes down or decreases, a negative divided by a negative is, guess what? Also a positive. So we sometimes say that substitute goods have a positive relationship. Again, do not think of positive as a good thing or they like each other or something like that. Don't think of it that way. Just think of it as the change in price goes the same direction as the change in quantity. Okay, either both positive or both negative, and that begets a positive number. Complements on the other hand, again, two things that go together. You increase the price of good A, and you have a decrease in the demand for good B. Again, using our little formula, you have an increase in the price of good A with a decrease in good B. Guess what? A negative divided by a positive is a negative number. If it went in reverse, it's going to be the same thing. If you raise the price, if you lower the price of good A and it increases the demand for good B, a positive divided by a negative, also a negative. So we say that it's got a negative relationship. Not negative in that they don't like each other because they're complements, they go together. But just kind of remember that formula. And then income elasticity, like we talked about a moment ago, just to expand on that a little bit, how a change in your income impacts demand. Like we said, income goes up and you buy more, it's normal. Okay, or vice versa, income goes down, you buy less. That's called positive income elasticity. Positive because, again, same direction, increase, increase, or decrease, decrease. Inferior good, you get more money, increase, and you have a decrease in demand, so that's a negative income elasticity because they're going opposite directions. Okay, so pretty simple, but again, just kind of know that rule. And last concept for this unit, utility. All right, so utility is the total satisfaction you get from consuming a good or a service. Okay, so you purchase something, you consume it, how much benefit do you get from it? Or sometimes satisfaction, we call that, sometimes they're called utils. Now marginal, remember marginals are a fancy word here, means additional satisfaction. Okay, so it's how much more satisfaction you get from consuming a good or a service. Okay, so typically we know this, marginal utility almost always declines right away. The example I always give, of course, you're starving, that first slice of pizza is just heaven. It's just, oh my gosh, there is a God. that 10th slice of pizza you eat, not so satisfying, okay? Making you sick to your stomach, making you feel bloated, all that kind of stuff. You get more satisfaction, more additional satisfaction out of the first one, and it gets less going on. Again, going from 0 cell phones in your life to 1 cell phone, that's as important as air, right? You gotta have it. If a cell phone is so important though, why don't you have 2 cell phones? Because the additional benefit of having a second cell phone once you already have one is very little. Okay, 1 cell phone is all you need. You can do everything you need on it. There's not much purpose to having 2, unless you're Walter White and you've got drug deals going on the side, and that doesn't apply to you guys. So in his case, he had a benefit for a second cell phone that Skylar didn't know about. Sorry, Breaking Bad fans. Anyway, in most cases, it's so much less, it's not even worth getting one, right? So again, the first one is always the best, and it continues to decline. Now, total utility, of course, is going to increase as long as marginal utility is positive, but marginal utility tends to decrease almost immediately. And then, of course, our idea behind utility maximization. Okay, you're choosing between 2 items. Okay, what did I put in here? Pizza and breadsticks, right? So, what's the best combination? The utility maximizing combination of the 2, where you get the most benefit out of them. And again, most people, when they go to a restaurant, they don't order 6 hamburgers. You get hamburgers, but you don't just want hamburgers in your life. You also want fries, and you want maybe a salad, you want a milkshake, you want all the other things to go with it, right? So how do we figure this out? So the key is, and this is important, marginal utility per dollar. Whenever you're making these comparisons, you always want to get it down to marginal utility per dollar. And you got to be careful, because they give you different information. Sometimes they give you the total utility. Then you got to figure out the marginal utility, and then the marginal utility per dollar. Sometimes they give you the marginal, and you got to figure out marginal utility per dollar. Sometimes they give you the marginal utility per dollar, and they make you work backwards for some reason. So you always got to be careful with that. But whenever you're making comparison, marginal utility per dollar is what's most important. And the marginal utility per dollar of the last of each item consumed should be the same. If you've done that, that is your check to know that, yes, I made the right decision. So, to give the example here that you can read, the last pizza purchased gives you a marginal utility of 15, and you paid $3 for the pizza, so your marginal utility per dollar is 5. The last breadstick you purchased gives you a marginal utility of 10. It costs $2, so 10 divided by 2 is also 5. That would mean that you've probably maximized your utility because you've satisfied our rule. The marginal utility per dollar of the last item consumed is the same for each. What happens when they're not the same? Well, when they're not the same, you always want more of the one that has the higher marginal product per dollar. Marginal product should be marginal utility per dollar. Okay? I put MP up there? Oh my God, no, I wrote it out. These should all be MUs. I will make this correction before I send this out. Okay. Example, the marginal utility per dollar of the last pizza purchased is 3. The marginal utility per dollar of the last breadstick purchased is 6. Okay? You didn't maximize your utility because this number and this number are not the same, and they have to be the same. Okay, so what should you have done more? More breadsticks, whichever one is bigger is the one you want more of, more breadsticks and less pizza. And that would balance it out and allow you to maximize your utility. So I remember every once in a great while they'll give you the chart with all the pizzas and all the breadsticks, and they'll tell you the marginal utility or total utility. You have to figure out marginal utility for each. And then you just do the thing where you go back and forth. You remember that? And you just, okay, whichever one's got the highest marginal utility per dollar, that's what you take first. And then whichever's next, and you keep going till you exhaust your money, and ideally the number should be the same at the end. So that's the idea. So there you go. Unit 2, I know it's a mouthful, but that's very foundational stuff for the whole unit, this unit for the whole semester. And so hopefully that makes sense to you. Again, I think you guys are probably getting it because we've done it so much, but as always, if you have any questions, let me know. And I hope you enjoyed that and it's useful to you. And until next time, again, stay healthy and happy.